What's up, filmmakers? Canyon Prince here. So today we're going to be looking at a new plugin. It's a film emulation plugin called Dehancer. And, I've always been a fan of film emulation, especially with shooting digital. On the first feature I directed, Hard Sun, we shot it on a Canon 5D. And at the time, I used Film Convert, which was kind of the only film emulation software that was any good back then, and it was great. It worked really good for what we needed it to do and take that digital edge out of the footage and give it a really indie kind of vibe to it. So now we're about 10 years later and Film Convert still exists. I haven't used it much since then, so I don't know much about, the changes that they've made. But one of the emulators that I've been looking at recently is Dehancer. And, I do all of my color in DaVinci Resolve now. So Dehancer, if you go to their website, they have a couple different versions for Final Cut Pro and Adobe, and also for DaVinci Resolve. So today we're going to be looking at the plugin inside of DaVinci Resolve, and we're going to be looking at using it for some clips on a new movie that we're in post on. It's a horror anthology called All of You Will Die. And the thing with this film is it's essentially 6 chapters and then a wraparound. And so I really wanted to give each of the films kind of its own unique look. Each of the chapters is a different subgenre of the horror genre. So we have a witch movie, we got a ghost movie, we have an exploitation movie, and stuff like that. And so I thought this would be a good test today to kind of come through and look at what all Dehancer can do. So these are the 7 clips from the 7 different chapters. And we're just going to kind of go through my workflow that I'm using. These were shot on the red helium. So it's 8K footage. It's super crisp, which is great. But, one of the things I wanted to do with the film emulation was kind of take off some of that bite from the digital. So let's dive into this first one. This is a little clip here from the wraparound. We shot this at a theater. It looks really cool. So the way I like to do this is first create a new node here, and this is going to be my color space transform. So I'll just grab the color space transform. This is part of the standard DaVinci Resolve. Drop it in here. Now with the input color space, we shot on the red and red wide gambit. So we're going to select that. And then the input gamma is going to be red log 3G or red log film. Whichever you want. We can look at the differences here. I kind of like the red log film. It's a little darker. So go with that. Then what we want to do is for the output color space, we're going to go to Rec 709. And then the output gamba, here we're going to use Cineon Film Log because we're going to be applying a LUT to it. And then that's going to correlate with the Dehancer plugin as well. So Cineon Film Log. So there we go. So there is, if we Control D this, you can see there's our log footage. And then there is our color space transform into Cineon log. So just, gives it a little bit of extra, takes a little bit of the bite out. So that's the first step. So then what we're going to do is create another node using Alt S. And then this is just going to be our LUT. So we can just right click on this, go down to LUT, and then we're going to go to Film Looks. And then here we have DaVinci's, film. Kodak 2383 is kind of the go-to print medium for film. You have your Daylight 5500, daylight 60, daylight 65 for the Rec 709s, and then you have your Fuji film as well. But we'll go with we'll just pick here in the middle. We'll go with Rec 709 Kodak 2383 D60. So there you go. So now we are in this 2383 and Cineon log. So now that that's done, now we will create another node with Alt S, and then this is where we're going to put our Dehancer. So we come down here to the Dehancer Pro, drag this in, boom, there we go. Okay. So first step, we're going to take this. It's got a few different options, but we're going to go with Cineon Film Log since that's what we converted it to. And then, so the reason I was really interested in this plugin is just, as you can see, there's so many different options here to really control the look of everything. And it's all based on color science and film developing science. They've really done a great job in just, taking that process and then applying it to a digital medium. One of the things I'll point out real quick, if you come down to monitor, this is great. It's got a little false color icon here, and you can see some of it's cut out because of the black bars. But basically, here's your legend for the color, and as you can see, purple is underexposed, and then up here in the hot pink, it looks like, or dark pink, that would be overexposed, so the lights up here and stuff like that. So we don't need to worry about that right now because we're going to be tweaking things, but it's a good little reference to have. Okay, so let's just start up at the top. So first off, we got our exposure compensation. So we can just drag this, and it's just, basically boosting the overall compensation. You can see you start to get some grain. Actually, I'm going to come down here real quick and turn off film grain for now. Okay, so we'll just bring this up to something that looks decent. Again, it's pretty hot right now, but that's all right. We have our temperature compensation, so let's just bring this. You can see it's the conversion we did, really pushed it into the magenta, so we'll just kind of bring it back into a better space. We got our tint composition if we want to make it more magenta or move it into more of a green, so we'll just find a sweet spot for that. It's got these diffringes here. Honestly, I don't know much about what these do, but the great thing about the Dehancer website and the manual is it goes through all of this stuff and explains exactly what it does and kind of what it's emulating from the film, an actual analog process. So then we have our film developer. Here's our contrast boost. We got to enable it first. A lot of these are unenabled by default, so you can see this is just adjusting the contrast here. When we did Hard Sun, I really love to just crush the blacks, but film, for the most part doesn't crush a lot unless you're using specific film stock that does that. So we'll just bring it up, bring the contrast down a little bit so we don't lose any detail on the shadows. We have our gamma correction as well. Right now this is pretty hot. Let's just bring that down a little bit for now. This color separation. Again, I don't know exactly the science behind what this is doing, but it looks like over here we're moving more towards the magenta, and up here moving more into the blues and greens. So we'll just key this in by eye. And then our color boost, down here, we're more desaturated here. We're really going crazy with magentas, so just finding a sweet spot in here for this. Okay. So now here is the film section. Now this is for your negative. So this is in my opinion, the best part of this plugin. There are so many different film negatives, as you can see here, and you know, usually what I'll do is I'll go through each one and kind of test them out. So we can just go through a few real quick. Here's some Agfa stocks. I used to, when I did photography back in the day, I shot on Agfa sometimes. So we'll look through some of these. Here's some Fuji's, Fuji Vivid, Fuji Reala. Again, I used to take photos on these all the time. Fuji Chromes. I really like any of the chrome stocks. You know, they have some really cool looks to it. Ektachrome from Kodak is my favorite. I used to shoot on that all the time and cross process and get some really crazy looks. If you've seen the show Euphoria on HBO, Kodak basically started making that stock again because they wanted to film on that. And if you're a director or a cinematographer and you haven't seen that show, I highly recommend it because it's just shot gorgeously. So here we have some Fuji stocks, Fuji print. We got some Fuji Superia, Fuji Color Superia, which are really nice. Here's some Ilfords. This is a nice black and white stock, which we're not going to be using, but just to give you an idea. And then we have a ton of different Kodak stocks. Kodak Color, Eastman Double, that's their black and white. Here's the Ektachrome. You can see it the Ektachrome kind of gives you a bleach bypass to some degree, which can be really fun. We have the Ektars, the Kodak Gold. That one's super nice. We have our Portas. Our Kodak Vision 3. This is a big, you know, go-to for big movies. You know, this is, I believe, one of the only stocks that Kodak makes on a mass scale now is the Vision series. So we will, you know what, I think we're going to go with this 500T. The T stands for tungsten. So we are inside, we're lighting with tungsten lights, so we'll go with that. This push-pull, again, I don't know the science for it, but I'll just eye this in. Now I'm grading this on a color-calibrated monitor, which I highly suggest using. I have an Asus, and it just helps with, you know, DaVinci obviously has the scopes and all of that, which is great as well, and you should definitely use those. But when creating looks, I like to, you know, be working off a monitor that's actually giving me correct colors and levels and stuff. So film compression, we can set our white point. And again, like, I very rarely use this section here because I don't visually see a lot that happens with these sliders. But if you understand the film process and, you know, read the information on the Dehancer site, I'm sure it is doing stuff, and you can find you know, some uses for that. So here in the expansion, this is where we set our black point and our white point. So, you know, we can crush the blacks if we want. We can really give it that faded film look. So for this, I'll just find a nice sweet spot in here with the blacks and the whites that looks good. Let's dial it in there for now. There's color mode, normal, and Luma. I don't know exactly what this does, but I usually set it to Luma. It just gives it a little bit nicer look, in my opinion. So then we have, this is our print stock here. So, you know, there's only a few options. Cineon, Fuji, 2383, and glass paper. I'll just go through these real quick. So here's the linear, then we have our Cineon film log, we have our Fuji 3513, we have our Endura glossy, and then we have our 2383. I usually go for 2383 because that's what the majority of your films are actually printed on. So again, we can set our target white. So this is essentially our white balance. So we'll just kick that all the way up. We can adjust our exposure up or down. Now this is, again, simulating what we're doing to the actual print, not the negatives. So just find a spot that looks nice there. Our tonal contrast, again, if we wanted to crush the blacks, if we wanted to kind of give it a fade. So I'll just find, again, a sweet spot in there. Our color density. For this one, and we'll push it a little bit, and then we have our saturation. So obviously that's with 0 saturation, so it's turned as black and white. That's all the way. So I'll just pull this down some to kind of take some of the color out. And then this analog range limiter is just basically, restricting the colors and the light into an analog workflow, because digital, has a broader spectrum. So I usually turn that on just to kind of help create that film look a little bit more. In our color heads, this is basically mixing the colors in the print process. And again, on the Dehancer website, there's a ton of information about this that explains it, and they have videos and stuff. But basically, they have these colors that they mix in the printing process that controls the different looks. So we'll just start to slide this around, and we got to enable it first and start to look at what looks good. So this scene's a bit warmer, so I'll bring it in here somewhere. We have our magenta. So this is essentially handling, a lot of our highlights. The section below is going to be the shadows. So we'll just focus more on the brighter parts of the area right now and see what looks good. I want them to be pseudo warm, and it looks like our skin tones are pretty good based on the scopes right now. So then we want to come in here to the shadows, and I think we'll bring these more into the green blue. Our midtones, again, we kind of want to push a little bit magenta, and then our highlights, we can just key in based on what looks good. I think I'm going to pull it down because you can see his shirt is kind of, we want to move that more into a white. Here's the preserve exposure. So if it tweak the exposure at all, this will help that. And then the impact, which is basically, the color head is not impacting it at all. And it's doing it 100%. So you can just dial this in if you want. So I actually think I'll put it at about 75%. Okay. So then we have grain, halation, bloom, film damage, film breadth, and gate weave. So these are all, different aspects of the film, and they have presets. So you can look film grain, 8mm, different ISO, 16mm, 35, and then 65. So you can use these 8mm. First, we'll enable this. I'll show you what this does. So 8mm 50 is going to be a ton of film grain here. 65mm, will have grain, but it's going to be a lot smaller. And then you can also go in to any of these and customize, and then it gives you all of these aspects. I'm not going to do it with the film grain because I usually don't run the film grain because the Dehancer plugin kind of already creates some film grain or digital noise from what I've seen. So I'm going to leave that off for now. So halation and bloom, these are, really great because they're qualities of film that people subconsciously associate with film. And digital, you don't really get it. So I always use these. Lots of times I'll use the presets, 35, and you're not going to see a ton of, but if you look up at the lights here, let's enable it. When I turn to like these no remjet, you'll really be able to see. If I switch to 8mm, it just gives this glow all over everybody. And that's actually, obviously really crazy, but we'll go into custom and actually let's set it to 35 first. And then, so we have a good base, and then we'll go to custom. So let's just slide these around and see what we like here. So then Bloom does a similar thing, but in the science of film printing and stuff, it's totally different. But we will come in here. You can see 8mm kind of gives that frosty, dreamlike quality to it. 65, you don't get much. We'll go to 35, and then in a custom, and here's you can see what it's doing. That's just giving that hazy light bloom all over the place, and that's taking it away. So maybe what we'll do, we'll turn the impact all the way up, and then we'll tweak these things and see how we like it. So this is limiting what it's affecting. You can see on his neck, you can see what it's doing, and then on the shirt and stuff, we'll just put that in the middle. Our detail, let's bring that down. Diffusion, that's kind of just feathering it out somewhat. With no diffusion, you can see a hard kind of halo around them. If we bring it out, that kind of disappears. Gives an overall haze to the scene, which is great. Amplify, again, for this, we don't want to go for a super dreamlike quality. Save lights. All of these are kind of just affecting the light bloom on everything. So I'm just going to dial it into what I think looks good to the eye, and then we can pull it all the way out. So I'll just bring it down a little bit to kind of see what works good. Okay. So then we have film damage. This is the same thing. It's got these presets, and then custom. You can control the amount of dust, the amount of hairs, the amount of scratches, the total amount of everything. We're not going to do that for this particular shot. There's another one a little later that we'll get into and use the film damage. But for this chapter, we want it more traditional film, so it's a little cleaner. Film breadth and gate weave, these are things that happen to the film when it actually runs through the projector. So just gives it a little bit more organicness to it. So we can just look here, 8mm. I believe this affects basically, as the film plays through the projector, there's fluctuations in exposure, contrast, and color, um, from frame to frame. And you can set your period of frames, essentially, that is changing. So, as this is set right now, every, I believe, 3 frames, the exposure is changing by 15%, the tonal contrast is changing by 15%, and the color is changing by 30%. So if we try and play through, and this may play through slow because this plugin is pretty juicy and processor extensive, but it's not playing through bad. So there's just slight variations of stuff. If we put this, if we ran this way up, you can see, it's flickering now, right? Which is very, inducive of old 8mm and old films and stuff like that. So that's obviously crazy. So we'll bring that down again. And then the color fluctuations as well. So if we put this all the way up, you can see the magenta's turning to a green and then coming back down as it goes. So you can just find something that works, and then, I would dial this way down if it were me, but you do you. All right, so then we got the gate weave, and gate weave is as the film passes between the light and the lens of the projector. There's a variation in its distance as it goes through there, and projectors nowadays, that's very minuscule of a difference. Back in the day, it was a lot more. So this just simulates that, and you can see the actual size of the frame changed a bit, so that it can create this aspect. So again, we have our, how many frames. We have our transition X and Y. So if we bring, X, we see it kind of rolling side to side. It's kind of rocking a little bit. If we do Y, that's in and out, right? Towards the lens and away from the lens. And then rotation is giving you, some crazy kind of shake, as you can see. So again, just dialing this in and then pulling the impact back a bit can just give you a cool little look. And then the last thing we have here is our vignette. Again, DaVinci Resolve has, it has bloom, it has vignetting, but I like to use them inside of Dehancer. So we'll just grab a frame here, go back a little bit till we see these guys, and then, if we bring the exposure up, then on the edges you're going to get brighter exposure. If we bring it down, it's going to be, well, let's turn it on. If we bring it up, you can see it's brightening exposure on the fringes, and then if we bring it down, it's darkening it. So we'll find a sweet spot. Now we can adjust the size of this. So if we bring it way down, then it's affecting everything. If we open it up, then it's just going to affect the edges. We can feather it or make it a hard line. If we bring our size down a little bit, you can see this better. So that's essentially your vignette. So maybe we bring this up, and then feather it out to what we like. We can change the aspect ratio if you want it, to affect the sides or the top and the bottom. You can do that. We shot this on anamorphic, so maybe I'll bring it in here somewhere like that. And then there's the before and the after. Maybe bring the size up just a little bit more so it doesn't cut that guy off. And then there we go. So then we can see this is the before with, let's full screen this real quick. So here's our before, or here's our with Dehancer. And then this is without the Dehancer, but with the film conversion and the LUT. And then if we turn them all off using Alt-D, there's our log footage. And then there it is with everything that we just did. So this is, looking at it, we're definitely a bit on the magenta side. So I'm going to come up to the top here and adjust our tint composition and our temperature. So let's see here. And bring it in here. In here. Yeah, that's looking a bit better. If we wanted to, we could come into our color head into tone and maybe just give a little bit. So that's looking pretty good. So if we play that back, so you can see there's definitely a decent amount of noise that the plugin is creating. If you have DaVinci Resolve Studio, they have a really good denoiser that you can plug into this to fix some issues. One last thing that I would suggest doing is, well, two things. So let's pop on the false color monitor. And we actually look pretty good. You got this purple here is underexposed, but it's just there on the edge. So I think we're safe on that. And these lights look to be safe as well. This halation right around there, I don't know if that's here at the 50% or if it's this pink up top, but I think we're pretty good on the false colors, and you can always add another node before your output and change that. You can also turn on this clipping and it'll show you if anything's clipping. It doesn't look too bad to me. And then the last thing I'll do here is the output. And this just is an overall impact of the plugin. So here's 100% of everything we've done. Here's 0%. So now we're just back to the color transform and the LUT application. So again, I will, you can really see kind of what it's doing. So I'll just dial this in to some sweet spot. Some people say, only bring it to 25 or whatever, but I'll usually find something that, visually looks good to me, maybe right in there, like 75%. A couple other options. You can create a LUT then based on this, and then you can just dump it on any footage you want, which is great. And then you have some options for quality. Normal, which is fast, so it's not going to slow down your system too much, and then higher quality, but that's really going to be slow. This plugin definitely is GPU intensive. So, if you don't have a good graphics card, you're definitely gonna feel that. And I have had a decent amount of crashes using Dehancer. Where just I'll get an error from DaVinci Resolve that the GPU's failed, and I'll have to save and then close down DaVinci Resolve and then restart it. But that's it. It's pretty quick. And again, I'm using this plugin on a 2-hour feature, so every single shot is running a an instance of this plugin, so it's sucking up a lot of resources. But if you're doing shorts or short form content or anything like that, you should be fine. Okay, so that's that. So what we can do, we can just select our color transform. Let's label these real quick. You don't have to do this, but it's good. So we'll call that color transform, and then we'll call this one our LUT, so we know what they are. And then this one we can call Dehance. You can see, it's really giving it kind of an old school quality. If we play it, you'll be able to see these scratches and, in here and the hair and the dirt and the damage and things like that. This gives it a really nice look, especially if you look, if we turn everything off using Alt D, all of our nodes, like that's our footage, right? So it looks great, and but to me it looks very much like video, and that's not what we're going for. So we'll turn it, and there we got our so that's the crash error that I get lots of times, especially when I'm running the film damage portion of Dehancer. You'll get this. So you just hit that, and basically it won't do anything now. If we play or anything, we get nothing. We're not locked out. We can still come in here and do stuff. It's just not responding in the actual viewport. So what I'll usually do is I'll just save it, and then I'll restart DaVinci, and then come back in. So I will do that now. All right, so we're back in here, and as you can see, that's our log footage that we shot, and that's with the correction we did. And this is a bit aggressive, so that is when I will come in here. I'll check our false colors. You can see all of this stuff is underexposed, pretty bad. So then I'll just adjust the output here. I guess across the board it's. So before we do that, leaving false color on, let's just come in here and play with our black point and just get rid of most of that. So that's not bad. We have a little bit of highlights and tweaking here. We can maybe bring our and again, you can do this at the end of the process as well, but it's saying that's a bit more properly exposed. So there's our original log footage, and there's with the Dehancer, and then I'll just come down since we did go pretty aggressive with this. I'll just bring this down some and kind of figure out where I want it. Maybe right in there, like 58%. So then if we play this, again, this is going to trudge along because of the film damage, but we can at least get an idea of what it's looking like. And it's playing back pretty good. Not in real time, but close enough for us to see what's happening. Here is our without Dehancer, but after our color transform, and that's what we've done. And then if we Alt D, turn off all nodes, that's our log footage from the red. That's what we shot, and then there you go with the look. So you can see, I mean, it's really taking that digital edge out of it and just giving it, you know, that looks like it's on film. Now we're losing, you know, a lot of detail in her hair and in her pants here. It's kind of just big globs of black here on the chair. So then what I would do is go in and just pull back that total impact again, you know, and just find that sweet spot in there. Maybe like 55. So if we full screen again, you know, we're still losing a decent amount from the actual log footage. That detail is in there, and you always want to shoot and light and expose your camera so you are getting all this detail, like these creases in the pants and, you know, the corner of this chair and stuff. And then, you know, deciding in color how much you want to crush that. If I was, you know, spending more time on this, I would go in and just adjust some of the black points and stuff. In fact, I mean, we can go up here real quick just to our black point. It looks like that's open all the way up. So then we'd probably adjust our contrast a little bit. we just go down here to our output and just bring it down some, so we're getting some, this is a black and white film negative, but then we could just pull it in so we get a little bit of color, maybe right in there. Then we can work on our look and find something we want. Now again, too, we're going for exploitation, so it's usually high contrast, so we'll boost the exposure, and just play with these things. Now you see, because we're using a black and white film negative, we're not getting a ton of difference with our tint. The colors aren't actually changing. We're just getting, it's becoming more blown out on her face and stuff. So we'll just play with that and see what kind of cool look we can come up with. I'm just doing most of this by eye. Yeah, we want to go for this high contrast look here. Obviously that's too much, but just finding that sweet spot. And that's why it's so important, I think, to be working off a color calibrated monitor that, so that you're confident that what you're seeing is what you're getting. So this one, I mean, we could pull her skin tones there, but I kind of like, going for more bleach bypass vibe with this. So right now with that, I'm just looking at this area in her face and seeing the difference as it lights her up. Maybe somewhere in there, because I want to keep a little bit of this shadow under her eye. And then the saturation. Now, because it's a black and white print, as we pull the saturation out, we're actually, introducing, it looks like, color back in to some degree. So maybe in there, click the analog range limiter. Again, with this, let's turn it on. I don't think we'll see a little bit of stuff going on here. But not a ton, because again, we're working off a black and white negative, and it's only at 50%, so the changes we're seeing are going to be a lot smaller. And then we're going to go crazy here. I'm going to slap on like maybe a 500 8mm grain. Maybe 50. We don't want to go super crazy, but you can see what that is doing, especially, kind of in this area as we turn the grain off and on. Generally, I would use this film grain sparingly, but again, we really want to go crazy on the look for this one, because we are going for that exploitation kind of move. So, we'll use that no rim jet For the halation, for the bloom, we'll go Super 8. Again, we just want to really give this an old school film look. We'll go 8mm film damage. It's just going to make this look super grimy. We'll go 8mm on all of this. And then we'll set our vignette again. And feather this out. And increase the size a bit. And there's that. So then if we wanted, again, you can check your false colors. Yeah, this one's crazy underexposed right now. You would want to go in and adjust that. I'm not going to right now because I'm just trying to show you what this looks like. So then maybe, that's the footage, 100% black and white. That's what we created. That's it without it. And then we'll just find that sweet spot in there of what we want. Maybe right in there. So if we full screen this and Control D, that'll turn off just Dehancer. So that's with the color transform. And then that's with Dehancer on. And then if we Alt D, that'll turn off all our nodes. That's the log footage from the red. That's what we shot. And then boom, there we go. So you can see, it's like digital film, grimy film. And we can try and play this through and see how the system does with all of this. This is probably the most aggressive you would push this look, but we can try and play it and see how it looks. And we're still catching, color. We're still seeing the red from the police lights behind them. So this is a nice look. I'm pretty happy with this. All right, great. So I'm not going to go into how to save looks and stuff. If you've used DaVinci, you know how to do that. I mean, basically, you just go here and you can grab a still, and then it'll add that to your stills gallery, and then you can just apply those to any clip you want. But one thing I will do, if you select all of these and then go to create compound node, then it just combines them all, and then you can just copy this and then paste it, and then it's a good way of cleaning up. So what I did with this movie is basically I created the film look, right, and did it in a compound node, and then added that to everything, and then I can still come in and add other nodes to, let's say I wanted to come in and clean this up or do something like that per clip. That's where I would make these different tweaks, whatever they might be, if I wanted to get her skin tones correct, or bring the shadows into a cooler world or something like that. And then that way you can control those aspects. So that's my workflow. If you have a better workflow, feel free to comment on the video and let me know about it. All right, so I just whipped through this next look for this apocalyptic one, and here's the finished look. This is what we shot from the red log C footage, and then here's our look. We used sepia, and then we pulled down the impact so that we could keep the colors. And yeah, for this, we're just going for a into the world kind of movie. All right, so I just whipped through that shot as well. So if we go to full screen, here is our original log footage, and then here is our Dehancer effect applied. And as you can see, I mean, you know, I think the difference is pretty unbelievable. It just really gives it the organic feel of film. Um, yeah, so I'm really happy with the result of that. Okay, so for this last chapter, things get a bit crazy in it, obviously, but we're going for more of like a Suspiria type look. So, um, I used the extra Ektachrome film stock and just tweaked with the colors and made this very high contrast. This is the log C footage we actually shot with um, red lighting on the day. I mean, you could just shoot with regular lighting and then slap a red color lay over it, but we used red lighting. So that's the original footage. And then with the film look applied, and yeah, so just I added grain on this and film damage and stuff. I left it at the 35 mil because we didn't want to go crazy on it, but this is the final for this. And I think it looks pretty trippy and crazy. You can see it's kind of falling apart up there at the highlight, so I would tweak that. And um, again, I would spend more time with some additional nodes inside of DaVinci outside of the actual film look to tweak some things and use some masks and stuff, but just kind of showing how you can create these different looks. Um, so to recap, you know, in a with one plugin, so we didn't use anything other than the color transform and the LUT application, and then we did everything else inside of Dehancer, and we were able to come up with essentially 7 completely different looks here for each of these films. And I I think they all look great and very cinematic. And I mean, that's my favorite part, is just if you look at before and after on each of these, it's just really mind-blowing what this plugin is able to do to just give it that organic film look and take that digital aspect out of it. So I'm super happy with this plugin, and again, I've really only scratched the surface with its uses, and essentially with DaVinci Resolve, you could use this for along with power masks and all kinds of stuff to do some great things, and using it on CG shots and stuff like that. But I just wanted to give you a rundown of how it worked, what it does, and kind of my application with it on our film All of You Will Die. I highly recommend checking out the plugin and giving it a test drive. You can go to the website at dehancer.com, and you can also use my promo code NOTAKING, NOTAKING. Use the promo code NOTAKING to get 10% off your purchase. They offer 3, 6, and 9 month licenses, I believe, and then also a perpetual use license. So I highly recommend doing it and getting it and giving it a try. So let me know your comments. If you have better workflows, feel free to comment and let me know. If you've used it, tell me what you think. And also, if you'd like to see more videos like this, as I'm making my way through post on All of You Will Die, if there's more stuff you'd like to see about the editing process or visual effects or coloring or working with our composer or any of that stuff, just let me know, what you guys are interested in seeing and learning more about, and I'll try to make some videos and post those. I'm also going to make a video for the Dehancer plugin that they just released for the iPhone. So basically, that coupled with the Blackmagic Pro camera app that they just released for iPhone, I think that's going to open up a whole world of uses and the ability to film and add color correction right on your phone for content and films. So I'm going to be making that video pretty soon, and I'll include a link to that, so make sure to come back and check that out as well. Until next time, guys, keep making films, and I will see you on the next one.